Hello everyone, and welcome to Uncivil Law, where we learn through the misfortunes of others. As always, I hope you enjoy this legal education content. And today will be the day I earn that subscription. For today's story, we are dealing with breaking news and an unprecedented violation of political norms in which the FBI has raided the home of President Trump. I don't believe in history ever there has been a search that's been conducted against the home of a former president of the United States. So putting aside any legal questions that might apply for one moment, let's just take note that this is unprecedented. And this, of course, would have to be approved by the highest levels of the Department of Justice because of the political sensitivity of it. So how high up it went in terms of approval is obviously questionable, but it went probably almost certainly at least to the Deputy Attorney General, and I'd be very surprised indeed if it didn't go to the Attorney General and possibly even with the approval of the President of the United States, Joe Biden. So this is an extraordinary search warrant in every possible sense of the words. This is unprecedented in terms of the FBI looking at a former president. And because it's of a president of a different party, politics are unavoidable to some degree. Because you wonder, and you must wonder, the degree to which this is being politically motivated instead of legally motivated. And there's even additional indication that this is politically motivated rather than legally motivated for reasons I'm going to discuss as part of the story. But first of all, let's discuss the headline. From the Wall Street Journal, the FBI has conducted a search of Trump's Mar-A-Lago home in Florida. The raid is part of an investigation, it has been said, into the former president's handling of classified information. Yeah, stick a pin in that. We're coming back to that. FBI agents searched former President Donald Trump's Mar-a-Lago home in Palm Beach on Monday, with people familiar with the matter said was part of an investigation into Trump's handling of classified information. The search was first made public in a statement released by Trump in which he said FBI agents were at his home. President Trump said the following: "Nothing like this has ever happened to a president of the United States before." He's right. You're hard-pressed to think of anything that comes close. I mean, the closest is the Nixon tapes. And those were tapes that were made in the office while President Nixon was still president and made within the confines of the Oval Office rather than his home. So there's definitely some unprecedented aspects here. After working and cooperating with the relevant governmental agencies, the unannounced raid on my home was not necessary or appropriate. The necessity of it and the appropriateness of it are questionable for reasons we'll get to. They even broke into my safe, wrote Trump, who had repeatedly suggested he'll run for president again in 2024. So one of the things that's here is that this seems potentially politically motivated, if not outright politically targeted, because people in power, the Democrats, are so concerned with Trump running again, they're looking to do anything to prevent him from running and winning. So that's where the legal goes into the political. And of course, when you're talking about a person who's been president of the United States and might again run to be president of the United States, a la Grover Cleveland, there is unavoidably political aspects to this. The fact that the FBI is conducting this particular raid as opposed to other particular raids, like the FBI can choose to conduct raids or not, and they don't often for political reasons. The FBI has been known not to arrest people for political reasons. In fact, these days, law enforcement in general has been known not to arrest people for political reasons, not to prosecute certain crimes for political reasons. So regardless of any aspect of what Trump may or may not have done, the politics here are, to some degree, unavoidable. The search began Monday morning and lasted until the evening, according to a person familiar with the matter. In February, the National Archives and Record Administration told a congressional panel the former president had classified government records at his Florida residence, saying it was in communication with the Justice Department, which was investigating the matter. We'll come back to that. Messages left for the National Archives and Record Administration spokesman were not immediately returned. Now, the way this article is written, right? The way this article is written, it implies that in February, the NARA raised concerns, and those concerns are just now being acted on. That impression from this article is not true. Aides from Mr. Trump did not immediately respond to a request for more information. He was in New York City Monday evening, according to a person familiar. A spokesman with the Department of Justice has refused to comment. The White House didn't get any advance notice of the FBI search at Mar-A-Lago, an administration official said. I suppose that's possible. The president isn't necessarily in the chain of command with respect to this. The chain of command for the Department of Justice stops at the Attorney General. And so it's possible that it stopped at the Attorney General. I can pretty much guarantee you this was approved by at least the Deputy Attorney General because of the political sensitivity of it. This did not stop at some lower level in the chain. This did not stop with some ambitious U.S. attorney somewhere. There's no way. This was Main Justice who did this. And then there's a question, how far up the chain of Main Justice did we go? Almost certainly, at least, the Deputy Attorney General. Probably the Attorney General. Now, did the Attorney General then inform the president? I mean, he doesn't have to. He's the chief law enforcement officer of the United States, so he doesn't have to. But the fact that they're saying that he didn't get informed at all, I don't know, man. I don't know. To conduct such a search, the FBI would need to convince a judge there was reason to believe a crime may have been committed. Yes, and also convince the Attorney General of the United States. Because the FBI, of course, is part of the Department of Justice. And this did not stop with some low-level lackey. There's no way. The Attorney General or the Deputy Attorney General, almost certainly the Attorney General, either knowingly, implicitly, or with willful blindness, authorized this search. The Justice Department has been looking into the former president's handling of records as well as the actions surrounding January 6th. The search is separate from the January 6th investigation because apparently this goes back to that concern from the National Archives in February, right? We're searching the president's home for classified records, right? That's what we're doing. That's the idea, right? Okay. Both parties have closely scrutinized the Justice Department as it has probed Mr. Trump's actions. The former president and some of his allies have suggested he's the victim of a partisan effort. Yeah, I mean, it's unavoidably partisan. While Democrats have publicly urged the department to be more aggressive. If they can do this to a former president, imagine what they can do to you. Tweet the account from Marco Rubio. There is that. There is that. We're going after our political enemies. You know, in every sort of change of party, I would say at least since Nixon. So I'd say this has been going on at least since the 60s. And at least since Nixon. At least since Nixon, every time there's been a change of political party, there's been calls to investigate the former administration. And that has never really been done before. People have never really done this before. They've never really investigated. In fact, very famously and controversially, Ford pardoned Nixon to avoid any problems relating to investigations, because the idea of investigating one's political priors or political enemies raises some really deep problems. Putting aside the law, it raises some really deep problems because it runs into and will run into political tit for tat. Because now that the norm has been broken, right, there's a difference between norms and laws, right? Norms are just practices. Laws are laws, right? So there was nothing legally stopping this from happening. It was just a norm. But now that the norm has been broken, the idea that future Republican administrations won't look at former Democratic administrations and investigate them and potentially raid their homes, right? It's the lid off Pandora's box. It is the breach of the norm. And I for whatever it's worth, I'll take note here that it's the Democrats, again, that are the ones that are breaching the norm. Because, for example, when it came to the Supreme Court nominations and breaking the filibuster, it was the Democrats, not the Republicans, who started that. The Democrats were the one who broke the norm. The Democrats were the one who killed the filibuster for federal judges. And then, of course, as we've discussed before, Harry Reid, said very famously, "You're going to regret this," and then they wind up did regretting it. And now it's just another situation of the same, where we're going to wind up in this political tit for tat. So the legal aspects are one thing, but breaking the norm, and it's the Democrats who are breaking the norm. Using government power to persecute political opponents, as we've seen something many times from third world Marxist dictatorships, but never before in America. The idea of going after your political opponents has been tempting for a very long time. It's been tempting at least since the 60s, and it goes well before that, I'm quite sure, because the political rivalries go back as far as you like. They go back as far as you like. And some of the political rivalries in older times in America will rival anything in modern America. Some of those people really hated each other and really despised each other. So the political motivations have been even stronger in the past on even bigger issues, and still they haven't done this. The 2016 investigated then Democratic presidential candidate Hillary Clinton over whether she mishandled classified information during her time as Secretary of State. So there's that. But of course, James Comey ultimately decided not to bring charges, and for some very legitimate reasons. Now, whether those reasons were correct ultimately or not in the end is a matter of debate, right? Because there was at least a prima facie case to be made against Hillary Clinton. But then, as Comey had noted, and Comey was correct, this particular charge had not been used in something like 90 years or 80 years. And I don't know there had ever been a successful conviction on it. If there had, it had been a very, very long time. And so the problem wasn't necessarily only the question of the law, but also the norm, right? This is what I'm talking about, the difference between law and norms. So Comey was at least partially basing his decision based on norms. This is a charge that has never really been used. This is a charge that hasn't been used in like 90 years. Hillary Clinton might be guilty of it on a prima facie basis. But if we bring this charge under this set of facts, it's unavoidably political. And so it's a deferral decision, right? It's basically discretion. Now, whether or not Comey should be the one making that decision or not gets into a whole bunch of complicated complicated things about whether or not the Department of Justice had in fact empowered him to make the prosecutorial decision, because he's not a prosecutor. Comey was the head of the FBI. So it would normally be the decision of the prosecutor. But then, of course, at the time, the attorney general recused themselves and blah, blah, blah. So there was an argument that Comey had been empowered to make that decision. So whether or not he should have made that decision, there were reasons for him to make that decision that were logical. This had been a charge that hadn't been used before. Hillary Clinton's violation appeared to be unintentional. The statute in question doesn't require intent, at least on its own terms. But then again, you tend to not read things in strict liability. You normally, even where a term is not provided, sometimes you impute a mens rea element because it's part of a standard charge. And even if you want to say it's a strict liability crime, the fact that there was no intent here might, in some sense, factor into your decision making, because maybe there is some sense there. So, like what Comey did, there was a justification for it. Whether or not it was the right justification or not, yeah. But it goes to show, I think, also the power of norms and how this, by comparison, is such a violation of the norm. Because he didn't prosecute Clinton for reasonable bases because it would have been unavoidably political. The charge was a bit weak. it would be unavoidably political. But here we're doing an investigation against a former president. And that's a little bit different than a former Secretary of State. So, I mean, there's a whole bunch of things to be said there. And this is where things get a little bit weird in terms of the motivation for searching this. In January, the National Archives retrieved 15 boxes of material from Trump, raising questions about compliance with federal law requiring official records to be turned over. Let's discuss that in more detail. Here's an article from February relating to this. This is from February 2022. 15 boxes of White House records have been recovered at Trump's Mar-A-Lago resort. I told you we'd come back to it. Right? The reason we apparently are conducting this search now, the reason that's been offered is that we are searching for classified records the president is keeping that he's not allowed to keep. Okay? He had authorization to have the records when he was president. He's no longer president. He no longer has authorization to have the records. They're the government's records, so they must be turned back over to the government, to the National Archives. That's the reason we're conducting the search now. But is it? Because in February, we retrieved 15 boxes of records. So in August, what records? So the official story has a bit of a problem. In February, the National Archives and Record Administration said it retrieved 15 boxes of records and other items that were stored at the former president's home in Mar-A-Lago. If we retrieved 15 boxes of records in February, why are we conducting a search now? At first reported by the Washington Post, the documents retrieved last month, so that was January. In January they were retrieved, contained important records of communications along with Trump's self-described love letters with Kim Jong-un, as well as a letter addressed to Trump by his former predecessor. According to the newspaper, keeping the boxes violated the Presidential Records Act, which requires the government keep forms of documents and communications relating to official duties. Okay, fine. You know, that's tenable. There is a law that says the papers received by the office of the president are the government's records, right? This is the difference between the president and the office of the president, right? So these records are the property of the office of the president, not the president. They're not the president's personal records. And to the extent there was any problem and clarity on that, Congress solved that long ago with the Presidential Records Act. When you have a job, any job, the documents you get as part of your job belong to your employer. It doesn't really matter if you're working at a Subway or at the White House of the United States, right? The documents that are being generated and processed as part of your job are not your personal records. They belong to your employer. This is logical. So the president receives records and documents, but they're not his records. They're the government's records. They belong to the office of the president, not to the person of the president. So you can't keep them because they're not yours. They belong to your employer, namely the people of the United States in the form of the National Archives. So that's tenable, but we did that in January. As required by the act, the records discovered at Mar-a-Lago should have been transferred to National Archives at the end of the administration. The Presidential Records Act maintains all presidential records must be properly preserved by each administration, so a complete set of records is transferred to National Archives. Yeah, that makes logical sense. In a statement released by the National Archives, again, in February, the agency said it arranged for transport of 15 boxes containing records following discussions with President Trump's representatives. So why are we conducting this search now in August? Representatives for Trump's informed the NRA they're continuing to search for records that belong to the National Archives. Trump said that they deny any nefarious intent and said the 15 boxes contain mementos, gifts, letters from world leaders, and other correspondence. Yeah, but that belongs to the office of the president, which belongs to the government. And it comes a week after the National Archives turned over the White House documents from the administration relating to the January 6th committee. So, yeah. So why are we conducting this search now is the question. What are we searching for? They say we're searching for records, but we got 15 boxes of records in January. Are we saying we didn't get all the records in January? If not, why not? What are we searching for? So things are a little bit questionable here. Things are a little bit dubious. So first of all, there's many problems with this on a whole bunch of levels. First, we're looking past the norm, right? We're looking past the norm by investigating our political priors and investigating our political enemies. This is something we just don't do in the United States. It's now something we apparently are doing. And now that you've done it, there's no end in sight. You can bet your bottom dollar that when the Republicans take over the House and the Senate, as I'm sure they will in the fall, there will be a new select committee investigating this. And of course, they will issue subpoenas, which President Biden will defy. And then there will be a vote of contempt of Congress. And then they won't prosecute the contempt of Congress, because of course they won't. So if you want a spoiler alert as to how things are going to happen, let me just tell you how things are going to happen. Here's what's going to happen. You can mark my words on this, okay? The Republicans are going to take over one house of Congress, probably both, but they'll take over the House, okay? The House and form of the Republicans are going to do a new select committee. The select committee will be formed, at least in part, to investigate this. They will issue subpoenas to various people. Those various people will refuse those subpoenas. The House will vote to hold those people in contempt, and the White House will refuse to prosecute them. There's your spoiler alert for the next, let's see, about year or so. Yeah, there's your spoiler alert for about the next year, 18 months. That's what's going to happen. And then, of course, people will point out the political hypocrisy of it all. The fact that, these cases this isn't being prosecuted. The Democrats will say how this is different and purely partisan, but it was different when they were in charge and blah, blah, blah. And you can write all the scripts in your head. You already know in advance what Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi are going to say. You already know in advance what the Republicans are going to say. It's, paint by numbers. You know what's going to happen. That's what's going to happen. So that's something to look forward to, I guess. All right, let's answer some super chats from you guys. Wendy Pinkerton gives $4.99. Yay, finally figured out how to become a member. Excellent. Love the program. Sorry I'm so technologically challenged. No problem. I'm glad you figured it out. There is a link in the description. It's the first thing in the video description. It should be. But there's a link in the video description that you can click to become a member of the channel. So if you have the join button on screen, then you can click that. If you don't have the join button, for example, because you're using an Apple device, no problem. There is a link in the description below in which you can click to become a member. And if you become a member, you get your name on screen, like these fine people did, which I updated this morning, in addition to other fine benefits. So, yeah, click the button, become a member today. Moniker became a member as well. Thank you for hitting that beautiful join button, Moniker. Wendy Pinkerton says $4.99. It appears I haven't figured the membership thing out. No little sticky thing next to my name. You figured out how to do a super chat, not how to join as a member. If you want to join as a member, click the link in the video description. That's how to become a member. It will take you to the right place. And Sandra C, 1999. Good morning. I read Trump lawyers advised Trump to cut off contact with Meadows. Do you think Mark Meadows cut a deal? I don't know. I have no particular information. A deal for what? I don't know. A deal for what? I don't know. But that's what's going on. So yeah, there's a lot of questions here that don't feel well answered. We're searching for records, but I thought we got all the records in January. We're searching his home. We're searching his safe. On what basis? Who approved this? The Deputy Attorney General? The Attorney General? What was our basis for belief? Maybe the Department of Justice will release a search warrant application. They typically won't, but maybe they will here to show why they're so serious. So maybe that will be a thing. Maybe the search warrant will leak and we'll have a discussion on that. That'd be fun. And what happens in the future as Republicans gain office? What happens if Trump gets elected in 2024, or Ron DeSantis gets elected in 2024, or 2028? Who do they investigate? How does this change the norms? How does this change America? How does this change the nature of what is valid and not in political arenas? And so there's a lot of very uncomfortable questions. Beej gave $5, say Super Chat $5 or more to enter the raffle for Kurt's hat. There is no raffle for Kurt's hat. No. If we do a raffle for the hat, it's going to be in the future. And then I'll have to order a new hat. But there is no raffle for the hat. But you're more than happy to Super Chat $5 just because you like me and you want to support me. That's fine. Yeah. Secret McSquirrel says, I can't imagine a judge signing off a warrant on this without something solid. Yeah. One would hope, man. One would hope, but who knows? Well, yeah, and the judge did, so who knows what's going on. So, will we get a copy of the search warrant? I don't know, but if we get a copy of the search warrant, we'll definitely cover that too. Because we'll see what the basis is, but they typically don't release those because they're part of the investigation. But maybe they'll release it here. Yeah. How often do I wash my hat? I don't. Wolf Rebel says $5. If you take political party out of the equation, it's classified documents in uncontrolled storage facility, which is a valid national security risk. Maybe, Wolf Rebel, maybe, but that presupposes there are records. And then again, what happened in January? Because as we discussed, the National Archives got 15 boxes of records in January. Did they not get them all? So something seems odd. Pesky Perquette gives $4.99. Thank you very much for your super chats. It is extremely appreciated. Yeah. The bar exam results don't come out till sometime in October, so nowhere in the near future. 2 months plus. The Project Veritas warrant also raised some real problems in terms of political norms too. Not for the least of reasons that it appeared that Project Veritas had information relating to the FBI's leaks, and so it looked like potentially a cover-up from the FBI. So there was, and also it's a raid on a journalistic outlet. It raised some serious questions as well. Yeah, I'm sure it has an SCI room. I have no doubt. Yeah. Whether or not he's entitled to those, but that doesn't necessarily mean he's entitled to those records, right? Former presidents get access to records, but that doesn't necessarily mean that all the records he was authorized. So yes, it's almost certainly true that his home has a SCI room for reviewing of secured information, because they continue to get information, but that information, in terms of what they're allowed to have and not, is obviously more constricted than when they were president, when basically their authorization was just yes. Their clearance as president was yes. Their clearance as former president is not quite as broad. So yes, I'm sure it's true that he has some sort of secured room. That doesn't necessarily imply that all the records he was entitled to, but it does raise the question of why those records were there. Why didn't we get them in January when we did our previous thing with the National Archive? Something is afoot. Cherry says, are you saying this shouldn't be happening? I'm choosing my words fairly carefully because I try to make sure to keep law and politics apart, right? So to the extent I'm commenting on politics, I try to use language that very clearly telegraphs that I'm talking about politics. And I think I've been very careful in my language as a result, right? So I'll talk about something like a norm as opposed to law. I'll talk about this is abnormal. This raises questions. This is that, right? So like there are some issues, and the fact that this is politically influenced is unavoidable because of the nature of what we're doing. So am I saying it shouldn't be happening? I don't have enough information to render that opinion. I am saying that by it happening, it raises a whole host of possibilities in the future that are uncomfortable for our country. It increases the probability that in the future, administrations will more aggressively investigate their political predecessors. And putting aside any sort of legal basis for that, the fact that that's happening and will happen, and this is probably going to escalate and probably result in tit for tat by future administrations, raises a whole bunch of uncomfortable questions when it comes to political issues. But I don't have enough information to say this shouldn't be happening legally. I do raise the question about why are we looking for the records now when we got 15 boxes of records in January? So I'm raising a factual predicate, right? If the reason we're doing this is to search for classified records, why didn't we get them in February and January when we got the 15 boxes of records? Did we not get them then? If not, why not? If we did, what are we searching for now? So something seems odd. I'm raising questions. I don't have enough information at this time to say this is legally invalid. I'm saying I have questions because things seem odd. You don't normally do this. This is against norms. It raises a whole bunch of problems for the future. They say they're looking for records, but they already got records. So what records are they looking for? And so forth and so on. Cherry says $5. So glad you explained that. We all need to stop assuming based on politics. Yeah, there are questions here. Like, what are we looking for? Even assuming we're looking for things we're supposed to be looking for, it raises problems. These problems are real. It is likely to increase political polarization. It is likely to increase political divisiveness. It is likely to increase future administrations investigating and searching the homes of former political rivals. It appears to be going in places that appear to be negative. That's all separately aside from the legal issues, as I've tried to discuss. TZ1052, New York, $5. Carter Page and Papadopoulos had illegal FISA warrants. So don't be surprised if warrants are a little bit loosey-goosey. We crossed the Rubicon a long time ago. I can't speak to the illegality of the FISA warrants because FISA warrants are very, very secret. FISA, for those of you who are unfamiliar, the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act, right? So there's a Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court in D.C. And the court itself is not secret, but the proceedings of the court are secret because it's national security. So the FISA warrant basically allows you to get a search warrant. Basically, in principle, and this is extremely abbreviated, but here's the basic principle. A FISA warrant allows you to get a search warrant for someone who is basically a spy or spy adjacent, or otherwise assisting a foreign intelligence apparatus. Who is an American citizen? Because if they're not American, so first of all, if they are not an American citizen and not in the United States, so not in the United States, not an American citizen, you don't need a warrant. That's what the NSA and CIA do with their time, right? So not a U.S. citizen, not in the United States, you don't need a FISA warrant. If you are in the United States or are targeting, incidentally, targeting an American citizen, which raises a whole bunch of issues because as long as you're like 2 or 3 steps removed, it doesn't count. So like if you just happen to come in the information, then it's totally different. So FISA only comes into play if you're targeting an American citizen or targeting someone in the United States. You're trying to get records from them. So what you need to basically show to get a FISA warrant, and again, this is extremely simplified. So just please take note. This is extremely simplified. But basically what you need to do to get this FISA warrant is to show that the U.S. citizen or person in the United States that you're targeting, you need to show that this person is a foreign spy working on behalf of a foreign government, is a foreign intelligence asset, or otherwise, spy or spy adjacent for a simplistic description. Now, the thing is, they issue the FISA warrants all the time. The FISA warrant grant rate is something like, and it's been a while since I checked, but it's something like 99.98%. That's about right, because they don't deny very many of them. The grant rate of FISA warrants is like 99.98%. Now, that could be due to a whole bunch of reasons. It could be, of course, because the U.S. government is just really, really careful in even applying for these things in the first place. So it could be that it's 99.98% because 99.98% of the time, it should be granted. That's one possibility, right? The judges are doing exactly what they're supposed to do, and they're reviewing the warrants in full application of all relevant law. And it just so happens to be that 99.98% of the times the warrants are exactly what they should be because the federal government is just really, really careful in applying for these things in the first place. That's one possibility. Another possibility is something other than that, where the warrants are being issued perhaps improperly against improper targets in which the affidavits are a little bit suspect. And also, by the way, these warrants don't necessarily name a specific person, by the way, because when I say targeted, a U.S. person or someone in the United States, you might have understood that to imply a person. That was my mistake. Some of these warrants are more blanket in nature. Some of these warrants apply to large groups of people. How large these groups of people are is questionable because, again, the entire process is secret. But it is possibly the case that these FISA warrants include not necessarily an individual, but many individuals, potentially large swaths of people. The degree to which these warrants are being properly issued or not is questionable because of all the things I just mentioned. So, with respect to those particular people, was a FISA warrant properly issued or not? I don't know. I haven't reviewed it. But anytime you're talking FISA warrants and you're talking, especially people that are part of the political apparatus, you raise concerns that, again, these warrants are being used perhaps not for their purpose of outing spies, but perhaps for their purpose of political targeting. Incidentally, by the way, for what it's worth, to give the U.S. government an additional point of credit here, this doesn't necessarily mean that the person themselves knows that they're a spy. Because a person could be compromised by a foreign intelligence asset without them knowing. So this doesn't necessarily imply any guilt on the person being investigated, because it is possible that, a foreign spy has corrupted you without your knowing and is using you without your knowledge, and perhaps information is being spread, perhaps even though you think you're doing the right thing. So maybe you think you're in full compliance with law. And from your perspective, at least, you are in full compliance with the law, but maybe you're not, because one of the people you're talking to is really a foreign asset. So being investigated doesn't necessarily imply that you yourself have done anything wrong, either knowingly or otherwise. It only implies that you have become a foreign intelligent asset, perhaps unknowingly. So the fact, there's a lot there. Hopefully that clarifies some of that. Cherry says, first actions one takes when warrant served. What do you do when a warrant is served? You let the warrant be served. If someone shows up with a valid warrant, you let them conduct the search pursuant to the warrant. If there needs to be some motion to suppress, then you bring that in an appropriate action. But you can't interfere with a valid search. At least you can't physically resist it, right? If the search is invalid, if the warrant's invalid, or something like that, then you can fight it in court. There are rules for that. If you're being searched, I'd recommend, here's what I'd recommend. If people ever show up to your house to search your shit, I recommend two things. Number one, shut the fuck up. And number two, call a lawyer. Now, you are not under arrest, typically, when they're conducting a search. It's possible they'll arrest you on site, but it's more likely they won't. It's more likely they're going to conduct their search first. And since you're not under arrest, they don't have to give you Miranda because you're not under arrest. Anything you say still can be used against you. So when the police come and do a search, shut the fuck up is tip number one. Don't say anything. Don't interfere with them, and don't help them. And for the love of God, shut the fuck up. And call a lawyer, because if they're searching you, you're obviously the target of something somewhere, and you have legal interests in play. And you probably don't even have a clue what those are. Call a lawyer, shut the fuck up. Don't talk. Don't volunteer information, because that information will absolutely be used against you. I wasn't Mirandized. You don't have to be. You weren't under arrest. Presumably. Z Seltzer, $5. Isn't the FBI notorious for taking their time? Yeah. Wouldn't the National Archives need to correlate the documents to find what they needed to get to miss the warrant? The FBI is generally an organization that is very thorough. This is one of the reasons, incidentally, that federal prosecutions have such high conviction rates. Because the federal government, generally speaking, is very thorough and takes its time and doesn't act until it is sure. So this is generally true. Now, that being generally true doesn't mean that's true in any specific case, because we have seen in recent years indications the FBI can and has been corrupt, with its agents admitting to such in some circumstances. So it is generally true. It is generally true, in my view. The FBI is an organization that is full of very conscious and conscientious professionals who do a very difficult job day in, day out, and tend to be very thorough, sometimes overly so, to be honest, and tend to take their time and tend to only act when they're sure. This is generally true for the Department of Justice at large. Whether it's true in any specific case, but yes, the FBI generally, yeah. Stephen Light gives $19.99. Great job as always, Kurt. Thanks for the stream. You're welcome. I'm enjoying answering your questions. Yeah. Joe says it's not a raid, it's a search with a legal warrant. Well, that's one of those you say potato, I say potato things. So what's the difference between a raid? What is a raid legally, Joe? I mean, this is one of those, I'm not trying to give you an unduly hard time, but like, what is a raid? Right? You say, oh, it's not a raid, it's a search, it's a warrant, it's a search pursuant to warrant. Okay, then what's a raid? Right? I mean, the word raid doesn't imply illegality. The police do raids all the time, legally. So, like, it might be one of those you say potato, I say potato moments, Yeah. Raid Shadow Legends. Nice. Is it possible the documents were classified retroactively? Oh, I mean, I'm not an expert on classifications. It's possible, I suppose, that something can be classified retroactively. I mean, I'm not an expert, but if they are, one of the first steps you'd take is just asking for them back. You wouldn't secretly classify them and then like conduct a search based on that. That would be weird. Lexi says, how do you find a good lawyer? Well, Lexi, I recommend 2 resources to help find good lawyers. avvo.com and Marndale-Hubbell. These are the resources I recommend for finding a good lawyer. So go to avvo.com or Marndale-Hubbell. By the way, not sponsored, but if these organization wishes to sponsor me, that would be fine. I'd take a look at that as a good starting point. And then also what I would do, by the way, is I would talk to at least 3 different lawyers, because you want to have some sort of chemistry. And and they may or may not charge you an initial fee for initial consultation. You should probably pay the fee, right? It may be a free consultation. It may be $150 for a consultation is not abnormal. My recommendation is you pay the fee. My recommendation is you pay the fee 3 times. You pay 3 different lawyers or more, 3 to 5. 3 to 5. You call 3 to 5 different lawyers. You call them, you see who you work best with, you do your due diligence, and you go from there. That's what I recommend it. The president can unclassify them. Yes, the current president can. Correct. The current president has absolute classification authority. The current president has the absolute authority to declassify any document at any time on a whim. It is one of the powers of the current president. That's true. How do you spell Marndale-Hubbell? I'm not sure. You can figure that one out on yourself. Martindale-Hubbell? I'm sure you'll figure it out. Wendy Pinkerton gives $9.99. Thank you. Your insight is much appreciated. I wish our government would focus on their actual work and quit wasting our money on the schoolyard BS. The idea that this is schoolyard BS is not without merit. There are some indications that we've gone through that suggest this is more schoolyard BS. Yeah. As long as you guys are continuing to provide super chats, I'll continue talking. It's not schoolyard BS when it's your opponent. I'm not sure that's true at all, but okay. Trump will be using this on the campaign trail, I'm sure. Yeah. I mean, the political ads write themselves. Will I do Lawyers and Dragons with Hogue? I hope so. They currently seem to have a campaign that's working for them, but I am not. If there's a slot that opens up, for another player, I'm all about that. $4.99 from Trump, from Stephen Light. If Trump wanted to release a search warrant, could he? He has a copy, right? He should. He might not have the affidavit to the search warrant. I don't honestly know that, to be honest, how that works exactly. Whether or not you get a copy of the affidavit or you just get a copy of the search warrant. But he has a copy of the search warrant, to be sure. Whether or not he also has a copy of the affidavit to the search warrant, that's the thing we really want. Like, I'm sure the search warrant itself just has to describe the person or things to be seized with particularity. So the search warrant itself probably says something like, presidential records that are, and they might specify it more specifically, like to the extent they're looking for specific documents, right? So they might name the specific documents they're looking for, or they might say like presidential records that are, classified or something, but they have to say like what they're looking for and where. And of course the place is at Mar-A-Lago. And so then you can look in anything that might have those documents, which would of course include his safe. So you can look in anywhere, you can look in his house and anywhere that might contain those documents, which, documents fit in pretty small spaces. So that gives you the ability to look just about everywhere. Here's a list of the items taken, 100 pages. That'd be cool. Has that been published? With the 100 pages? That'd be interesting to take a look at. With FISA warrants, we don't get affidavits, just the search warrant. That's probably pretty typical. Yeah, that's probably pretty typical. I don't think you get the affidavit typically. How many FOIA requests were filed for this warrant? I'm assuming many, and it's not going to be granted. It's a FOIA exception. It relates to an ongoing active investigation. I believe it's exception number 3, if my memory of FOIA works. Let's see how good my memory of FOIA is. I think it's exception number 3. Hold on. How good? Well, let's see. Exemption 1, classified national defense and foreign relations. So probably that. 2, internal agency. That's not it. 3, information is prohibited from a disclosure by another law. Privacy Act is the one that most obviously comes to mind. 4, trade secrets. That's not it. 5, interagency or agency memorandum or letters. That's not it. 6, personnel, medical, financial. Yeah, no, not that. 7, certain types of information compelled for law enforcement purposes. 8, records that are contained in or related to examination on behalf of any agency responsible for regulation of financial institutions. And 9, for some reason, geological and geophysical information. So I think 3. C1. Oh, I was right. It's exclusion 3. It's not exemption 3. So I was half right. Also, I forgot there was a difference between an exemption and exclusion. So those are the exemptions. And then under the exclusions, C1, subject of criminal investigation proceeding is unaware of the existence of records concerning the pending investigation. Such would interfere with investigation or proceeding. 2, information maintained by criminal law enforcement agency and individual status as informant is not known. And then 3, existence of FBI, foreign intelligence, counterintelligence, or national terrorism records are classified fact. So it's 1 and 3. C1 and C3 in the exclusions list, and exemption 1 and exemption 3 in FOIA. So many FOIAs were filed, but it's going to be denied. Rob Robinson says, so Kurt, what you're saying is that the president is forever free of criminal liability? Rob, if that's what you got from this stream, I would respectfully submit that you are not paying attention. Rob, if what you got from this stream is that I am saying that a president is forever free of criminal liability, you, I respectfully suggest, have not been listening to the stream with the nuance in which I've been trying to speak. Wow. Tell me you didn't watch the stream without telling me you didn't watch the stream. $2 from Cherry says, you are knack for explaining as a gift. Thanks for your patience. I try. I'm also getting better at the patience because the stress of my life is getting reduced, which helps. Stephen Cooper, $5. What's the likelihood of Trump being DQ'd in 2024 for withholding of documents? 0. Trump can't be DQ'd for that reason. The Constitution specifies the grounds for which a person can run for president. Trump is fully qualified. They can't prevent Trump from running. They also can't prevent Trump from winning. Incidentally, even up to and including him being arrested, charged, and convicted, he could run from prison. Because that's what the Constitution says. Liz says, I think that's exactly what you were implying. You may not have said it, but that's exactly what you're implying. Liz, I don't know what to tell you except to listen to my stream more closely. I stand by what I said. I don't know what to tell you. Goofus says, UL said Trump is exempt from raids because he gave some documents. Didn't say that either. Really not saying any of those things. I am questioning the factual basis for this search because they say we were looking for classified information or other documents that were supposed to be turned over to the National Archives. But we turned over 15 boxes of documents to the National Archives in January. So my question is, okay, did we not get them all in January? Right? If what we're saying is the reason we're conducting this search is to look for information that should be in the National Archives, but in January, we turned over 15 boxes of documents to the National Archives, right? Then the question is, what documents are we looking for? Did we not get them all in January? If not, why not? If we did, what are we looking for? I'm raising questions. Leslie says, you're doing just fine. Explain this all to the layman. Ignore the haters. Thank you for the post. You're welcome. Liz says, I have and always respected, but it's exactly what sounds like Kurt. Well, I don't know what to say, except I'm raising questions because I have concerns. I say, look, it creates problems on norms, which it does. This has never happened before. Like, this has never happened before is just an objective fact. To the best of my knowledge, there's never been a search warrant conducted at a former president's home. This is unprecedented in that respect. This, therefore, violates a norm in addition to whatever legal issues there are in play. Because the norm has been violated, it increases the probability that this will continue to happen into the future. As other presidents take power and other parties take power, it increases the probability that there will be tit for tat for political retaliation, among other reasons. So, like, the fact that this has happened increases the probability it will happen more in the future for political tit for tat. Does anyone really have any doubt that if the Republicans take over in either the House or Senate, does anyone really have any doubt the Republicans will have a committee that will be investigating this? Does anyone really have any doubt that will occur? Does anyone really have any doubt that it will occur, that such a committee will issue subpoenas to people in the Biden administration, that Biden will refuse to cooperate, that the House or Senate, as the case may be, will issue a contempt citation, that Biden will refuse to prosecute that contempt citation, that there will be calls of political hypocrisy, that it will increase political divisiveness, that will increase the political temperature? Right? Does anyone have any real doubts that all that will happen? It's like, this raises questions. And then on the legal basis, it's like, I have questions there too. Potentially criminal gets $2 to say, but because the FBI surely doesn't lie on warrants. One can only hope, man. One can only hope. Lying on a warrant is bad. It's perjury, bad. But then again, who's going to prosecute you? Prilonata says €2, but doesn't that mean Trump could keep his prawn? I'm not sure his prawn was subject to search. Carrie says, can you film a search? Sure, you can. Yes, if you're otherwise, because the search warrant gives you the right to be there, and now you're just filming something in a place you have a right to be. That works. Do they wear body cameras? I'm not sure whether or not they do, but they could. Was protecting a person from being searched from evidence being planted? Not much. What's to protect someone from evidence being planted? Not much. The good character of the police officers. Things have been planted before. We have proof the FBI lies to get search warrants. We have. I will agree with you that there's proof that police officers in general have lied to get search warrants without making any specific claims about the FBI. But yes, lies have been in search warrants. In fact, apparently, most notably recently, the Breonna Taylor search warrants appear to contain out-and-out lies. So yeah, that there are lies on search warrants seems to be validated. Cherry says, dumb question. Trump still has Secret Service protection? Yes. So 2 government agencies present in a search. Are extra steps taken needed as a result? I'm sure the FBI gave the Secret Service a heads up that they were coming by. The president himself wasn't there, but his home is still subject to protection. So there probably were Secret Service agents present at his home because it's his home. So there probably were some agents there. I mean, not as many as that would be if he were there, but yeah, they probably gave him a heads up, I would imagine, but I don't know for sure. PA Grunt gives $10. Do I doubt GOP will launch a committee? Nope. Do I think anything will come from them? Nope. The GOP is feckless and weak and part of the club. That too. Prilotsiata. Do you think Nate has info on police planning evidence? And will you consider doing a deep dive with him? I'm sure Nate could testify as to incidents in which he is aware that evidence was planted. Sure. But that search warrants contain lies and evidence is planted, there's evidence that demonstrates that. Sure. When in history has a legal system stopped a totalitarian revolution? I don't know. Rhonda says Florida federal magistrate Bruce Reinhart, who approved the FBI raid at Trump's home, is an Obama donor and represents several Epstein associates after leaving the U.S. Attorney's Office in 2008. Oh dear. If that's true, that's not encouraging at all. All right, so it looks like we've come to an end of the stream. Uncivil Law, New York Post article from this morning. Trump raid not about classified documents. It's about January 6th. Okay, well, that's even more concerning then. But okay. Yeah, I don't really know about that. I'm sure there will be we will have more story on this later, I'm sure. Mary gives $5. I'm not for division, but Trump really is beyond the pale. I've tried to remain unbiased as I could to watch this unfold, but Trump seemed to want a coup. Thank you for your super chat. $4.99 from Wendy Pinkerton. As much as some of the comments on the stream annoy me, you're approaching all sides of the argument is appreciated and necessary. Thank you. Yeah, I try to be as reasonably objective while also telling you whatever biases I have. I try to make everything as plain and clear. I don't try to hide the ball. And I try to separate legal issues from other issues. And to the extent I comment on issues outside of law, I try to telegraph I'm doing that so that there's no confusion. Because, like, is this legally valid? I don't know. I mean, I have concerns about it because it seems a little suspect. If we're searching for January 6 documents, that raises a whole host of other problems, potentially. But okay. But we'll have more things. But yeah, I try to separate all those issues, but stuff like that. To Truth for Liberty, what steps did Secret Service take to authenticate the warrant? I don't know. I don't know what the standard protocol is for such things. But if a bunch of FBI people show up with FBI credentials and say, here's a search warrant, then, you know, I mean, that's probably sufficient to, I don't know what steps they in fact took, though. But the search warrant has been posted on Twitter. Let's take a look. Let's take a look. Let's take a look. Let's see if we can find it. Does anyone have a copy of it? Can anyone tweet it at me? You're gonna need some loud music. Three boxes are clear and appear to be full of newspapers. If you can't read the documents, though, I mean, you know. I don't have a copy of this. I can't find it. $5 from KR Thunder. Thank you for giving my brain something to ponder while working. It's a welcome distraction. You're welcome. I'm going to give this another minute, and then I'm going to end the stream. If I can't find it, I can't talk about it. Sherry says they can't find it either. Yeah, so maybe it doesn't exist. We're looking for the search warrant. Someone said the search warrant had been posted on Twitter. I can't find it. Chips and Science Act opinions? I don't know about that. All right. Okay, it doesn't look... I guess someone who said that it had been tweeted was mistaken, because there does not appear to be any tweet. So whoever said it had been tweeted apparently was mistaken, because there does not appear to be any tweet. I can't find it, and no one is tagging me. So I guess they were mistaken. They were lying? Okay, well, fair enough. All right, well then, that'll be all for now. Excuse me. If you've enjoyed this stream, please remember to do all the YouTubey things. First of all, have you considered liking the video? There are 1,100 of you watching and only 500 likes. Perhaps if you hit the like button, the YouTube algorithm will like the video more, and that will be good for the channel. Have you considered hitting the join button? If you don't have access to the join button, no problem. There's a link in the description by which you can become an uncivilian. And is your subscribe button red? If your subscribe button is red, the subscribe button is having a bad day. It's feeling a little angry and hurt inside. It's feeling a little unloved, underappreciated, and it is raging. But it's not a problem, my friend, because you're in a position to be the change we all want to see. By merely clicking the red subscribe button, it will stop being an angry subscribe button and start being a gray, peaceful, calm, integrated subscribe button. And that will be great for the world. So click that red subscribe button today and help the subscribe button be the subscribe button we all knew it really could be on the inside. I've been Uncivil Law. Until later, my friends, I hope all is well. Cheers, my friends, and goodbye.